My conversation today on Inside the Wounds is with Giovani Morales. He's a songwriter, a musician, and a family man. Today our conversation's about the sacrifices involved in being a pro-level musician while also being a wholesome father. I'm Joaquin Rodriguez, and this is Inside the Wounds with Giovani Morales. Dude, how the hell are you, man? It's been a minute since we've talked.
Yeah, I know. I think last time I gave you like some tips and pointers on guitar and riff writing and all that, and then life kicks in, and you got your band, your podcast, and everything else, and I have my family and my struggles.
Yep. My struggles. I love that. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. Just everyday life, man.
Totally, man. And yeah, I mean, that's a great place to start, man. I know you're a very busy guy. I know you work a job that has very demanding hours. You're a very wholesome family man as well. You're into cars. But on top of all that, you're a badass fucking musician.
I'm glad you think so. I think I'm like, okay, I'm glad like some people think I still shred. I still do shred, but I mean, in grand scheme of things, I consider myself as like average. But I strive to perform at like a professional level. That's how I practice. Metronome every day, riff writing, I record at home, but again, that doesn't take away from like how perfect I need to record or how perfect I want to record, And I think that's more so like the inherent musician side of, us artists. We want something to come out so clean, so perfect, the way that we envision it. And it doesn't take away from any of that. It just becomes more demanding as you get older. Because I've been playing since I was like 14, 15. I think it was like I didn't really take it like seriously until like I was like a sophomore in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since then, it's just been like a long road,
Right.
It's ups and downs, and then and it's always been a struggle. Well, it's always going to be a struggle. How tired you are, and then like are you going to get up and play, or is today like day you're going to sleep a little bit more. And I had my nights where I'll stay up all night till like 6 a.m. and then go to work or something, and sometimes like I'll go to sleep and I say, what, I can't do this tonight, and I think you have to allow yourselves those breaks. And also things I didn't really even give myself was actually breaks or time or a chance to live life. I was so committed to music that I told myself, no, I have to sacrifice this, I have to sacrifice that, which is cool. I mean, like if you're into that, that's cool. But now that I'm at an older age and I've seen a lot of death, I've seen a lot of like illness, in my life, because I'm a healthcare worker. I started seeing that, your years in your youth, they're so valuable and so precious that when we're younger, we really take them for granted. Like those days that your homies invite you to the bar, or hey, let's go snowboarding and let's do this, or that place you want to see, that road trip. I mean, if you're a touring musician, I've only really done it like once, with my bandmates, but I loved it so much. But at the end of the day, I had this thing where it was either I pursue this lifestyle, or do I stop, go back to school, and then, get a career going because I needed to support a family, the sure way, my plan B then became my plan A. And right now, music is really my plan B. I do it for fun, but I don't like downplay it, when I play.
I like what you said, man. And like, it's funny because when you were talking about taking things for granted, it's funny because when this episode drops, our second song, Gloom, it should be out. And that's exactly what that whole song is about loss and just like how we do take things for granted. You know what I mean? Like we kind of get into a routine, like, when we're used to seeing like, whether it's like our mom every day, our uncle, our aunts, or whatever, then you realize there comes a point where it's like, oh shit, like they're getting sick, or oh shit, like they just passed away. It's like, what the hell? Like I didn't even know that was possible. We kind of get into that trap where routine, like death doesn't even seem real anymore because you're so in that routine that, like you said, you do take it for granted.
Yeah. And I worked 2 jobs throughout my 20s. I've when after I left my first band, Condemned. Well, actually, that I feel like that was more so. My first band was actually called Last Hours, and it was there where I learned kind of like the foundation of like music, and I felt like I needed to sacrifice everything to really get on top, you know. And in a lot of ways, I did. When all my friends went out to, you know, take a break from band practice, right, or rehearsal, they'd go outside, hang out, and I'd be the guy inside the rehearsal room still playing, you know, practicing this, practicing that. And over the years, I learned that, you know, it's also a good thing to take time away from the instrument to allow your mind to make those connections, because it's not like you're going to shred like you're insert your greatest idol here in, you know, a span of 30 minutes or a span of 15, 20 minutes that your bandmates are outside, you know, hanging out, enjoying life a little bit, you know, talking, being a person. You know, I've sometimes they call me a machine because they take off and I'm still there like, you know, and then they come back and it's like, all right, let's go back at it again, you know, and then I'll play. And, you know, honestly, that's how I ended up messing up my arm. I had a job at a movie theater. So back then they used to like run the film through the projector. And then the cool thing about like the Transformers movies, right? I was, I think 18 or 19 at the time, early 20s. Those movies were so long. So because we had like several theaters playing these long movies, there was a lot of downtime. So I'd always take my guitar with me. You know, I'd sit down and play for like 2 hours, unplugged, you know. And when you play unplugged, you really force your hand to like pick harder, right? So you can hear it. And when you have a distortion, you don't really play as loud, but I ended up overstraining or like straining my arm where I developed tendonitis. Oh. And then that forced me to like stop playing for almost a year. And then when I started playing again, I was already at the end of like my x-ray clinicals. And one of the techs there said, hey, try this like elbow brace. It's like this tennis elbow brace. He put it in the wrong spot, but then I like adjusted it to like my forearm. And then I was able to play again without any pain. But it was like this big bulky thing that would just kind of go around like your elbow or your like forearm area. Yeah. And I saw basketball players having this compression sleeve. And I was like, hey, like, I want to try that, you know? So I tried some compression sleeves, and then that's how I ended up getting back on the instrument. But what set in those like 8 months to a year, I had a girlfriend. I was going out with friends. You know, we were going out and hanging out, doing this, doing that, having a couple drinks here and there, going to watch this movie. So I like became a person. And then when I was trying to get back onto it, it was so hard because it was hard to like sit down for 3 hours by yourself and then say, I need to get this thing down. I need to progress. I need to get better. When I can just easily, you know, take a 20-minute drive, hang out with my friends for the next 3 hours. Yeah. But I needed to do that in order to get back in and, you know, condition my arm again. And it was the most frustrating thing to hop back onto the instrument. Once I did, I kind of isolated myself. My friends, you know, did their own thing. A lot of them stopped playing music. I ended up just sticking to it. And then I joined another band. And that was kind of like the next band I was in, playing deathcore. And this was back in like 2008, 2009. I mean, it used to be called Condemned to Exile and then became Aristea. And then around the time the kids were in high school, I mean, there's literally me and the bass player out of high school, and then we're chauffeuring these high school kids around. You know, I think the youngest member was like 14 or something, you know, and then we needed to ask the mom for permission to have them come on a show, and we can't have them come home too late, you know. Yeah. We try to be responsible, but I always try to be like the responsible person. It's really hard for me to also, you know, just go to a gig and say, all right, I'm gonna smoke, you know, and then like I'm gonna go play, you know. I usually prefer to do that after. And then over the years, it was just one of those things that I just don't do. It's just because it's too demanding to even think about doing it these days. Right. Anytime I'm under the influence, it's time taken away from, you know, being sound mind, you know, like now it's like I'm not really fully there, and I can't fully be there to either write the music, be there for family, where at any given notice, I need to be ready to, you know, take on the next task that I need to do day by day.
Right.
But, back then there's less responsibility. I always struggled with trying to be responsible and, trying to live my life. Because for me to be responsible felt like I needed to do the school, get a stable career going. My parents are getting older. The house has to get paid for. There's a lot of things that were riding on my shoulders that I felt I needed to be there when the time came, like my time was limited. And when I see some of these other band members, I think like, man, they must be, lucky because all that stuff's taken care of, And what I learned over the years is that you really have to pick and choose how you want to live your life, because no matter what you decide to do, you're going to struggle. And ultimately, you have to, you're in control of your own life, Do you want to struggle paying bills, or do you want a comfortable life with a stable job, And even with the stable job, you can get fired, you can get laid off, you can do anything. And then your life may not be fulfilling. And then if you happen to choose the music life, I think you're going to regret no matter what decision you end up making. If you're like 10 years down the road, you're playing music, your band isn't so successful, your band isn't doing this or doing that, or you don't picture yourself being where you wanted to be, at the end of the day, you can say, at least I got a chance to do what I wanted to do. Because you might be in that position in that band in 10 years or 15 or 20 and then say, man, I should have gone to school. So which one is it? And then that's something that I learned over the years. And, I made my decision. Obviously, I went to school. I had to drop the band. And, I actually, when I was on that tour in Arizona, the 1 hour that I slept, I had this crazy nightmare about my mom. And, she was at the doctor and that she got sick and it was cancer. And we were waiting for the results, right? But I can only imagine the most excruciating pain and this excruciating like bad news that she's had. And she's, you feel like, wow, she's in so much pain. And then when the doctor comes in and tells her exactly what she has, like this pain just became unbearable. And, it wasn't my pain, but I saw this unbearable pain happening to my mom in this dream that I woke up, and that was one of those things where kind of like pointed me in the direction where my time is limited. If I continue with this band, I cannot support my parents. I cannot support myself. The future's unwritten. Maybe I could have, maybe I couldn't, but, like I chose a safe route. Sometimes I look back and I think about it and I think, man, I probably should have tried harder, because when you're young, you don't really think of different avenues. I mean, podcasts weren't really a thing back then. YouTube was in its infancy. Doing Instagram reels was like non-existent. The only thing I can think of is like giving lessons. And even then I don't feel like I can justify charging anyone for a lesson or an idea or something like that, because it's something I enjoy doing. But I also feel like the gift of music's so precious that I don't feel, to me, it just wouldn't feel right. Then I've also had like my parents' friends say, oh, why are you going to school for music? Or why do you want to do that? How is that going to put food on the table? Again, and no support. My dad's probably the only person that would understand. My mom didn't. I think the only thing she really supported was my x-ray decision, my career path in radiology. And that was it. Other than that, I didn't really have any other support for the things I wanted to do. Even now with the car stuff, she even approached my wife and said like, oh, doesn't it bother you that he's buying car parts and, going out and doing that? This happened a couple of years ago. So ever since then, like I've also been put off about anything my mom really thought of, And over the years, now being a father, like resentment kind of kicked in over some of the things I had to grow up with. And, she wasn't really the most approachable person, and I didn't really feel like I had the best childhood growing up. I mean, I'm alive. I'm thankful for that. I didn't die or anything, but at the same time, some of the things that we endure as kids, they come back as adults when we're fathers, we're building a family, and it takes a toll. It's easier when you're young to neglect it, but as you get older, some of these things creep back up, and then they hit harder.
You were kind of touching like, music being your plan B right now, but we're in actually a really awesome time where you can just be an at-home like studio musician and still make it.
Yeah.
What make it means, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, when you're young, you talk about making it, but you don't really define making it. And when I try to put this thing on making it, or even my bandmates, when we talked about making it, no one really ever defined it. It was just this thing like, oh, we just got to play the next show. We got to, write the next song, do this, do that. And I didn't feel like anything was really kicking off until like I was really in Condemned. And, that was my first time at an actual like legitimate studio. And I remember the first time we went there, we had, we practiced our stuff, right? We knew how to play. And then one thing about me, and I don't know if it's the same with anyone else, or I try to define practice as the time you spend on your own with your instrument. And that means you practice the material, you get it down, you practice to metronome, you do what you need to do to get it down, right? Your practice methods. And then your rehearsal happens with the band. So when you really just get with a band, it's just a matter of you guys playing an ensemble together. And that's it. There's no like, oh, how do you play that riff? Oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? No, you already know what to do. If the music's already written down somewhere like Guitar Pro, or if you sat down with another guitar player, you guys practice your parts, figured out who's going to pan, right, who's going to pan left, et cetera, et cetera. That's one thing. But then once you don't waste anyone's time. Once you know what to do when you're with a full band, same thing for vocals. You rehearse it on your own. You have the music in the demo. So when you go into the studio, you know the rough idea of what you want, and then you can embellish on top of that. And that's kind of how like I approach things over the years. So when I went into the rehearsal studio, everyone knew their parts.
You said something interesting that nobody knew how to define what making it was. What's your definition of making it? Let's talk about it like in today's terms, given there's many ways to make it. Right?
Yeah, there's many ways. I think for me, I think for me to make it is defined as I can make a living off of it. Meaning that, or if not a living, maybe it would just be like supplemental income. Because in a way I kind of wanted to be recognized for me being able to play well or good. That was like good enough for me. That was like earlier on, that was like me making it like, oh, Gio, yeah, he's a great guitar player. That was like something I took pride in, like, oh, Gio, he's a great player. Oh man, like I took pride in that. I don't go out and glow and say I'm the best player, but I practice hard. I sacrificed. I did everything. I try to play so cleanly. I try to play cleanly live. I try to give a show live. And for someone to say, well, yeah, man, you played great. That was enough for me. Just some kind of like, hey, you did great tonight, or hey, that new song you wrote, or that solo, or that riff, it's so sick. That's enough for me. I think now, if I still get it, it still feels great, because music's not my main income. It's not my main source of anything. It's something I do for fun. But again, it doesn't take away for how well I want to play. Something about getting something so locked in, just like it pumps my heart. It almost feels like I'm working out when I'm playing, But like when I'm thinking about, making it, if I can get some kind of supplemental income, that'd be great. But for me to try to release a song and, getting someone to mix and master, even just like the logistics of it, to learn how to mix, learn how to master, write the music, be a dad, work overnight. And then I already sleep only 4 hours. I mean, how much more can I give to any single thing? And I know it comes down to time management, but at the end of the day, how much time do I really have if I only have 4 hours? I'd say right now, even if it's just recognition, where I managed to maintain my playing, that's making it. You're above everything else. You're playing. you're playing at a level that was better than what it was back then.
I gotta say this, dude. I feel like you have a very unique playing style that I'm actually quite envious of. And I actually I gotta tell you a story. I don't think I've ever told you this. So
No,
back,
yeah.
I want to say this was like my senior. It was either my junior or senior year of high school. Um, it was already like in my head, like to like get an 8-string at some point. But every time I would try to think about like justifying it, I was like, nah, I think I'm okay with 7-string. Like I could just tune it lower if I need to.
Yeah.
Then I remember one day on YouTube, I saw one of your videos, guitar playthrough videos you did with Somnist. It was the intervals.
Oh, Somniest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the intervals play, and I was like,
Oh,
I gotta get I gotta get an 8-string now. Like I have to get an 8-string now.
yeah. Oh,
dude,
man. Yeah, what was your question?
No, man, and I gotta say this, dude. Like to this day, dude, I think you're probably one of my, if not my favorite 8-string guitar player.
Oh,
like even
wow.
like to this day.
That's wow. That hits here, man, because for someone else to say that, like, I mean, like, I don't consider myself as anyone great. I just like I put a lot of work on that song, me and Ronnie, and I remember being at the Logcat studio. There was like 7 band members at the time, and I sat down and I wrote this like 6 super long riff, and you'll know what part I'm talking about. It's like it almost sounds like it repeats twice, but like it's like I think 8 measures of just a phrase, right? And then it repeats. So that's like 16 measures total for that one riff. And I remember sitting down and writing it, and I came in with just like, okay, I gotta write sick shit because these guys depend on me, and I don't want to write like weak material because ultimately their success depends on me. And I'm not saying like me in terms of I'm the one bringing them up, but ultimately if you have a mindset that I need to perform and play and write to the degree that everyone else's well-being depends on me, and if everyone else had the same mentality, I don't know if anyone else did, but it's a huge responsibility, like you're a band member. Your success depends on someone else, and someone else's success depends on you. So with everything going on, every move you do on your own time to bring up the band is crucial, not only for your success, but the success of your brothers. Before I went off on that tangent regarding, I know we were touching on intervals, and then you asked me about...
I didn't really ask you a question. I just told you the story about
oh, yeah, that's right. No, and I know you and I, like, we kept in touch over the years because you were like, hey, I think you were going to school for business, right? And you were like, hey, I'm thinking of, like, throwing this, like, show over at the college, this and this and that. Yeah. And at the time, we did not have any band members. It was literally just me and Ronnie. And I was still so down to be like, hey, Ronnie, I do want to just drive out to Colorado for this one gig. Like, we'll just backtrack everything. You shred on the guitar, I'll shred on the guitar, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll just do this duo thing. Like, I was still down for that. And I think, with us being as busy as we were, because I know he also became a dad, and, he had his life and all the other things that go on with being a parent. We got sidetracked. I got sidetracked. If you don't have it written down somewhere or a constant reminder, you're going to forget. And I think over the years, it just probably like just fell off, because I don't know if you did that show, and then I know you asked me, but I know you told me around what time, and then, it's like that track that I, worked on 10 years ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, and
I forgot
it's been a steady... You forgot you asked me that?
Yeah.
No, yeah, I was like, yeah, like, yeah. Dude, he digs the music, and then like he's inviting us, like, yeah, I'm so down, even for one person. I played a show for like literally no one, except like other band members back in Condemned. We did like this show thing, like we did like 2 shows in one day, went out to like Santa Barbara, played another show, and then I don't know if it was one in Ventura County. Then we drove up to OJ, or Ojai, I don't even know what it's called in California. And then we played the show, and it was, I want to say when deathcore was like this big thing, the breakdowns and everything.
Yeah.
and we played at this pizza spot. And then I know I don't know if it was the same time or this other time we played at this other venue. And I vaguely remember because this is 2008, 2009. And the kids loved it. And I want to say kids because I was already in my 20s, right? And, locals, 18, 16, 17, like they're coming out to a local show. It felt like it was packed. You got kids like kicking and everything. We're like chugging. And I'm like, damn, this is so sick. And I remember that day because that was the last show I was playing with them before they went off to play another show. And I want to say out of state, but I can't remember exactly what they were going out for. Because I was able to do the Arizona stuff, but I couldn't do that other one because of my job. And that's where like the realities of like having a day job and trying to balance that out with being able to do the band stuff, right? Because ultimately it has to come out of your vacation. And ultimately that's what I did. I took vacation time to go do that one tour, and these guys were going to do the other one. And that's where it kind of settled in, where I had to pick and choose, and I need the stability to be there for my parents.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where I am now. Like I need to choose stability to be there for my family. Not to say I don't want to play music or like play any live gigs. It's just the reality of it. All the other band members either have day jobs, they have their significant others, their parents as well. So Kirby, same thing. He's also a parent. Mark's parent. So there's so many other demands on us, where I feel like if I had a second chance or some advice for even like younger musicians, try to get into the industry. And I mean, not just the music industry, but, jobs that kind of give you that flexibility. You do film, right? You're recording, you're doing podcasts, you're immersing yourself in this day and age where you can take side gigs and do these types of things. And because the success is going to come as long as you know what you're doing and you're willing to progress in what you do. Whereas me, it was like, if I go to music school or some kind of like audio engineering, like what kind of job can I get after? And ultimately it depends on the person, the individual, right? You have to be self-motivated to really capitalize on your training and your ear to really come up with good, sick music. And, I was, not to say I was motivated when someone passed away, but when Diego, Volumes guitarist, I don't know if you heard of Volumes, passed away, right? I remember when Aristea was there recording, I forget the track, because they picked me up. They said, "Hey, you want to go to the recording session?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm down," and I go, and I think they wanted me to do something with the guitar because I used to mess with and like intonate guitars and do all that stuff back in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I had experience doing it, and I haven't done it once I became an adult and started working days and like day jobs and everything. But they were having an issue with the guitar, and I don't know if I fixed it or not, or they managed to fix it by the time I was there. And I saw Diego working on the recording, and then he was laying on the drums on MIDI, and Mark was there recording the song. And when I was watching him, I was like, damn, like Mark's shredding this track, and Diego's like recording. And then when I hear that Diego was like mixing and mastering, doing all this other stuff, and I think he even got an award in like the Latin Music Awards or something. Like I know there was an award that he got, but I was thinking like, man, like this guy, obviously he had the background because I think his family or his dad like owned a studio or something. But I started thinking like all the other people that don't have that background but can still come up, right?
Yeah.
Like they can still, learn how to mix, learn how to master. And over the years, I think with social media and all the distractions that we have now, it's way harder to create. It's way harder to remember things, like anything, like whether it's to practice a song, a track, a riff. Like if you don't have, and I don't want to say it's a strong mental mind, but I feel like it happens to the best of us. Like, happens to me a lot more. Like I try to sit down and play, and I get sidetracked, and like you need a constant reminder to get back on track. And I don't know if it's coming with the age. I mean, I'm only 30, right? But I felt like I was more focused, more razor sharp in my early 20s. But in my early 20s, I think Facebook was barely a thing. Before that was MySpace, but we weren't, we weren't walking around with our phones and in constant connectivity all the time. It was like there, but it wasn't like full blown like it is now, where everyone's strapped to a cell phone, and now we have like these reels. And if they don't catch like the attention and within like the first 3 seconds, you lose the audience, right? They'll just move on to the next thing. So you have to have something that captivates, and you have to constantly try and fight for that attention. And it's easy to doom scroll. I can easily like be taking a dump and I'm like doom scrolling because I'm trying to push, but nothing's coming out. So I'm like, all right, next. I mean,
totally.
Yeah, and that's probably like the only time that I have downtime, or when my son falls asleep in the car and like, I'm in a parking lot because I can't get him out and I want him to get his nap. And then I'm doom scrolling. I'm like getting my dopamine hits, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a movie because I lose interest in a movie. So then I'll try to watch a movie or a show, and I tell myself, you're going to watch 30 minutes of this, right? One thing at a time, just focus on this. And sometimes, like when I even try to work out, I'm working out, and again, it's like, oh, I didn't do the dishes yet. Well, I didn't do this. And then, like, oh man, my toenails are too big, right? And then like all this is going on, and then my mind can't just say like, just focus on this one thing. Just do this right now. Then you do the next thing, and then if you have time, you do the rest, and so on. It's so hard, and I think our minds just got like rewired for that constant, or that like super quick, how do you say, pleasure or the satisfaction. That's why it's hard to like sit down for 3 hours and practice. As far as like playing, I know I'm like saying a lot, but what about you? Like, how long you been playing guitar?
Me, I've been playing guitar since 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to say like the time that you spend or when you started doesn't equate to how good you're going to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can't compare that to like these 5-year-olds that are out shredding, us, and they only had the guitar for like a week, because ultimately, we have our own timeline. And that's what I also learned over the years. Like, you're on your own timeline. You define what you want to do when you want to do it. But with social media, like, don't worry about who's releasing all these reels and all these videos, because you kind of have to stay the course with what you're capable of doing. If you want to learn audio engineering, I think you have to sit down and really practice that constantly. If you want to learn how to shred or write riffs, then you have to sit down and practice that constantly. Not for 5 hours out of the day, but you might have to do like an hour here, 30 minutes there, 45 minutes the next day.
Right.
We're not perfect. We all have day jobs, but having a job in the industry kind of gives you that flexibility. That's what I was trying to get at, is that I would tell my younger self, like, look, if you're really serious about this, try to get a job doing this, whether it's photography, graphic design, things that can give you that flexibility to really venture and make your own hours.
Right.
Because ultimately, that's what's going to determine your success. And I think Misha also kind of broke the world of what it is to be a successful musician, and even Tosin now, because before that it was like, oh, I'm the guitar player, right? I had that mentality. I'm the guitar player. I come into the studio, right? And I kind of had to suck it up, because recording was the least favorite thing I wanted to do. Yeah. But if I wanted to put out music, you're going to have to learn how to record yourself, and that's what I told myself.
Yeah, and dude, I'll say this. I think you have tapped into a guitar playing style that you have the ability to control an environment, which I think is a very rare skill or talent that people have, musicians have, I should say. And just everything that I've heard you do for any of the bands, like just the social media stuff that I see you on Instagram, like you have this power to like really control the mood. And really the only other guitar player that I know that can do that very well is Stephen Carpenter from Deftones. Like,
oh, really? Wow. Yeah. That's
so
crazy.
I think you and him are like really the only two people that come to mind that have that power, that control to do that. And to me, it's like a superpower.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. I feel like Stephen Carpenter is like way up there. The only reason I say that is because he's had a lot of success, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, he's way out there, and I feel like me, it's like I'm just trying to like finish a song. Like I'm just trying to like sometimes I feel like I'm just trying to like shit out whatever I can shit out, just enough, just so I can really just finish this track and make it sound better than what I thought it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too is like a lot of experimentation too. You have to put yourself where it's going to sound like shit. It has to sound bad for you to know it's not going to work. And I get these random ideas at the worst possible time. It's 3 a.m. I'm at work. I'm in the middle of my job. And by the time I'm home, 8 a.m., it's like, or 8:30, it's like, I'm too tired. Do I sleep? Oh, that was a sick idea I wanted to do earlier. And, that idea is long gone. I was so like inept in like sacrificing this, doing that, and I felt like I've also become very bitter when I was first like Insomnious, because I remember being part of this band, sacrificing all this, and seeing some band members like not do their part, and I was on, I don't want to say I'm the passive aggressive type, but I'll see things and then, I'm just like, what, that's their life. That's how they want to live it. Like, whatever. Okay, that's fine. But when I started seeing more and more, like I started sacrificing more and more, and then they're still doing the same thing and, not willing to get their act in order to contribute or become part of the band, but they can contribute financially. But I mean, financially is one thing, but the other thing is to actually, be present to play your instrument, because what good are finances? I don't have finances. So I felt like I had no say in how they wanted to work the band, but I blew up on the person. I just straight up said like, look, you always have all these excuses for all these things. I don't have money. I don't have anything. I'm sacrificing a lot of my time to do this. And to see you just kind of like blow it off and always have like this excuse for this and this and this and that. Like, now looking back, I feel like they were probably just trying to live their life, and they were kind of caught in this in-between limbo stage where they want to have fun. They also want to do music. But I feel like you also need to have a balance, a good balance of like what you can do.
Here's an interesting question for you. Is there, what scares you right now?
I think, wow. I think the main thing that scares me right now is not being a good father, more than anything. Because I grew up in a household where I didn't feel like I can say that things were happening to me. So I feel like I have an anger problem. I'm just going to straight up put it out there. I feel like I have an anger problem. People may know it, may not know it. I may just blow up once, and then, it's almost unheard of, because I feel like I know myself more than anyone else, and I feel like the only person that knows me better than myself is my wife. And being in charge of a life, my son, right, watching him during the day, takes a toll. I'm already up all night. And, and I feel like that's why I end up staying up for 24 hours, at least once or twice out of the week. Because the time I choose to play guitar is the time I don't spend with my son. And I understand that we all have to fill our cup first before we can take other things in, right? Like you have to give yourself life before you can give life to others. You got to love yourself before anyone else. And when I grew up, just to put it out there, I was molested as a kid. Friends may know it, other people may know it. It is what it is, and to this day I struggle. But I could not go to my parents, specifically my mom. I could not go to my mom and say, this is what happened to me, because I lived in constant fear that I was going to get beaten by my mom. That's kind of how I grew up. When I was, 5, I want to say that's around the age it happened, because I remember being in kinder and going to elementary school, and this went on for like till I was 10 or 11. And at that point, I felt like I was almost like the guy was trying to bargain with me not to say anything at the same time, right? And I was almost at the cusp where he couldn't control me as much.
Yeah.
But it would still happen, because at the end of the day, sometimes what would happen, it was like this thing that it's like, okay, this is just going to happen. And I was just a lifeless body just there for it to happen, just to get through that. And I started remembering when my babysitter passed away. You kind of block out all these things, but
Yeah.
you eventually remember. And once you start having one memory, more comes up. And I'll touch back on that. But when being around for my son, like I have like, I don't want to say I have this, I want to say it's an anger issue where sometimes I'm like extremely frustrated and I'm like ready to just scream at the top of my lungs. And a 2-year-old kid's not going to know if you're like pissed off, or if you really don't want them to do something. Like, they just look up at you and smile.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be my mom, but in a lot of ways I feel like I am. And when I look at my dad, the crazy thing is, it's like my dad's the same way he was with me, with my son. He was my safe space. I always gravitated towards my dad, and I see him playing, I see him doing his own thing, and interacting with my son. And then now as a parent, I'm struggling with this anger and this resentment towards my mom, because I couldn't go to her and tell her what happened, because I remember she told me, do not let anyone touch you here, or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I knew what kind of mom she was, because I was in constant fear that she was going to hit me. I was in constant fear that I was going to piss her off. So it's not like I had a safe place to go home and tell my mom, look, this is what's happening, or this is what happened. And, and over the years, I told her, like, look, she would like tell me, oh, look, he's doing all these school projects. He's doing this, he's doing that. And I told her, like, don't compare me to him. Like, I don't want to hear it. This isn't something that, I want to hear here or anything. We still took him to like Knott's Berry Farm, and, I was still going over their house, doing this and doing that. So it only happened when I was super angry that I remember I took my skateboard to school one day, and some school administrator like pissed me off. Like, I was livid, right? And I was to the point of anger where no one can tell me anything, and I had a fear of repercussions. That's how, like, I'm usually like the good student. I do all my homework. I did everything to the T. I follow all the rules. It's really rare when I go out of my way to really like break rules or, get away with things. Like, I don't even consider myself that kind of person to this day. And I was so pissed off that I didn't care about any consequences. And I skated to confront the guy, and I grabbed his younger brother, and I told him, I was pissed. I skated all the way to their place, their apartment. And I told him, tell your brother what you did to me when we were kids. And he played dumb. He tried playing stupid. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I know what you did. I remember, and I told him like all the stuff that he was doing. He drops his mouth and says, eventually fesses up and says, oh, I don't know what I was doing. I was, this and that. And I had a skateboard in my hand, and I was just ready to bash his face in.
Right.
I was that close to just doing it. And I just, I walked away. And it was a good thing that I did, because who knows what would have happened, right? I killed a guy, severely beat him, this and that. And, I could have had a completely different trajectory in my life. And I skated home, and I was still angry. And I was pacing back and forth, and I was still like pissed off. Like, I needed to break something. And it was only under those conditions I was able to tell my mom. Because I was like, I had fists on. I told her what happened. And then, like, after that, I said, you know what? Fuck this. I disappeared for 3 hours. I skated out of the house and disappeared. I went to a friend's house, and, and that day, like, she told me that people were looking for me, this and that. And, I eventually came back home 3 hours later, and then, I had to file a police report. everything. Ultimately, nothing came of it because of how long ago it happened. At this point, I'm like 17,
Yeah.
16, 17. And at that point, I woke up from wake up to go to school. Sometimes I don't want to go. My mom couldn't tell me what to do. She asked me, "Are you going to go to school?" I said, "No." What can she say? I just dropped the bomb on her.
Yeah.
And, they try to do things to kind of get my mind off it, visit other family friends that were far away, and over the years, eventually that kind of died out in terms of that secret that I told my parents, but it still stuck with me because every year or every couple years, it becomes this intrusive thought where I'm constantly it comes to mind. It never leaves you.
Sure.
It stays with you for life. I'm 36 now, and I mentioned it and it happened at 16, and the time frame when it first happened was, 5 to 11, 12 years old. So, and as a parent, I grown a lot of resentment for my mother. I love my mom, but there's still resentment because she couldn't support, the things I wanted to do. When I told her, look, I don't want to play music at church anymore. That's kind of where I first started playing guitar. It was at church, playing chords. I initially wanted to play bass first because I thought it was easier. And there's a story for that another time. But eventually I switched on over to guitar. And I told her, look, I don't want to play this anymore. I want to, play metal and do this and that. And my mom had a fit. Oh, you want to play music for the world instead of playing it for God, this and that, and blah, 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 blah. So I had no support. Early on, I had no support. This is when I was in Last Hours. So now where I am in my life, the most precious thing to me over the years was doing music, right? The car stuff. I was doing the car stuff before my son was born, and then now I have my son. And the only other thing that's important to me was my wife. I knew who I was marrying. I was with her for almost a decade before we got married.
Wow.
2011. So 2011. Oh, 5-6 years. We got married in 2016, but we're almost married for almost 10. We're married for 8 years already, right? So we have at least a decade together. And my mom didn't want me marrying this lady. So she's going through all this stuff where she doesn't want me to marry my wife, not the music, not the car stuff, but yet now she wants to be a part of my son's life. Now it's grandma, right? My mom didn't want me to be anywhere near my uncles. My uncles were great. They're funny people. They're my dad's brothers. I enjoyed going over their house, but it had to be a secret every single time. My dad would say, just tell your mom we went to Toys R Us. And in a way, sometimes we did.
Yeah.
That's why it would take so long, right?
Yeah.
But it would just stop by our uncle's house on the way home.
Right.
But I had to lie to my mom, a little white lie. Yeah, we were just at Toys R Us. And it was hard to do, but I had to do it. And because I knew my mom would throw a fit. The kind of person that she was, she'd be pissed. And that's not something I wanted at home anyway. And I was thinking what's so bad about being at my uncle's? But now she wants this easy track life of being there for my grandson and my son, and being part of that when she couldn't accept and be part of all the other stuff that was important to me. Nor my wife, or believe that she can, be a good wife, a good friend, a good partner for me. Or do the car stuff. It was to her, it was just spending money, but what about living life?
Right.
And when I come back to think about my son, I'm not trying to be that person where I'm pissed off all the time, but at the same time, I'm not trying to rule or keep my son in line through fear. Fear is only good for so much, but you need to be able to gain someone's respect and be able to discipline them without, whipping them or hitting them, to the point where if they feel they did something wrong, they can't come to you. And that's kind of what I was living through.
Wow.
And even my birthday, and over the years, I dwelled on my birthday, And this past year, I remember being told happy birthday. Your birthday isn't always like on a Saturday or Sunday. It's during the week. Well, I'm being told happy birthday. And then, same day I'm getting molested, my babysitters. So when they say, oh, it's your special day, happy birthday, this and that, and I'm getting molested, I mean, what was that supposed to do to me over the years? And so there's all this stuff going on that I'm dealing with as a parent now, that I want to be a good parent, and I'm trying to, and like, these are my struggles, every day, because sometimes I can't sleep because of, my history, my child abuse. And it's hard because a lot of times I feel like I'm not doing enough. It's probably like the number one fear is just not being a good parent because of, my history. And it would break me to have my son fear me, when he gets older and he can't come to me because he's scared of what I'm going to, do or anything like that. And, I haven't done anything that's like that, but sometimes I feel like I need to raise my voice to get his attention, but then I have to come back down and tell him, look, I don't want to be mad. Even though he can't understand him, I still try to come down to his level and just tell him, look, it's not safe doing this, you don't hit right now. I only do this because of this or this and this, and I'm trying to make that a habit, because ultimately I don't want to repeat my mom's mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do better than my parents.
Yeah.
And also like not being able to provide for our family, coming up short with, being able to provide. And
well, dude,
that's that.
Now, dude, I was going to say this, man. I mean, just like from an outside perspective, I mean, obviously I don't know you like super well by any means, but from outside perspective, it feels like you're crushing it, man. Like it really feels like you're fucking crushing it. Like when it comes to art stuff, the music stuff, you're fucking killing it. And dude, just you saying this and like what you don't want to become in terms of like a parent, the fact that you're realizing all this now, especially since, your son's only 2, I think is what you said.
2.5, yeah.
That's
2.5 now.
That's fantastic that you know what you don't want to be and you know what you want, that's huge. That's the, how you're going to win as a parent right there. So you're totally on the right track, man. I mean, give yourself some grace and, totally be nice to yourself, man. I mean, I think that is probably key, is like being kind to yourself.
Yeah. And my wife reassures me I'm doing a good job, I'm being a good father, and but a lot of times I don't know if it's like imposter syndrome's the way to describe what I feel, but in a lot of ways I don't feel like I'm reaching that, because when I see my dad, he never once raised his voice at me in a way where I feared him.
Right.
And let's say I did something bad, right? He would just, look, don't do it anymore. This isn't the right thing to do. It would hurt to know that like my dad didn't approve of something that I did or wasn't doing right. Like that's all I needed as a kid. My dad would just had to tell me, look, just don't do this anymore because of this and this and this. That's not right. It's not the right thing to do. That was like, wow. Like my dad actually told me that wasn't the right thing to do. It's almost heartbreaking because I came up short for my dad. We as kids try to please our parents. And for my dad, he's my world.
Yeah.
Because he led by example. And in a lot of ways, like I see my dad and that's how I want to be. And ultimately I'm struggling with the side of what I feel like I am, more so like my mom, because I'm, maybe it's the lack of sleep. Maybe it's just the inherent things that I've dealt with, the childhood trauma. And I aspire to be more like my dad. And at the same time, I feel like I'm struggling, just being my mom.
Mm.
Yeah. And my wife reassures me that, I'm doing a good job. But it's hard to really accept that.
Well, dude, I mean, just like I said, everything that you said here, I can reassure you just based on what you said, dude. Like, it sounds like you're breaking generational bad habits, that cycle. You know what I mean? Because,
Yeah.
dude, you laying that all out there and you saying that's a fear that you don't want to become. Like, dude, you're ahead of the game right now of like what you're wanting to achieve. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button to stay on top of new episodes of Inside the Wounds.